just really the result of Governor Walz's executive order that has declared a peacetime emergency. So, given that under that directive, in order to be prudent, we're suspending in-person Metropolitan Council meetings in the chambers, and we're doing that under the authority of Minnesota Statutes Section 13D.021. Now, so regrettably, although we can all be together, it does make more of a challenge for us to be as open to the public for public comment. This is streamed for public, so the public is able to listen and watch us, but we don't have the feedback to get public comment in quite as readily available way. So I ask those that are publicly attending would like a question or a comment, the way we have thought that would be effective would be for anyone in the public to email one of the council members, whoever you know, or your council member in your district, and those emails are available through the website at council. If you want to kind of look up the name, and I presume you could probably text as well. For our council members, again, try to use the wave function, which I think those of you kind of getting used to this technology have kind of found a way to do that. Or you can make comments to either myself or to everybody, or to Liz, who is tracking this. And also, you are free to make any physical wave. I think in the last meeting, we had our agenda that kind of squeezed everybody's faces out. I've asked for maybe if we don't have the agenda in front of us, we're able to see each other. You can kind of just nod, but does anybody want to see the agenda on the screen? Otherwise, I'm going to kind of suspend from that, because I am probably, maybe you have printed it out, and so we kind of know where the agenda is. Yeah, good. Okay, that's what I thought. So then we'll be able to see each other. You can wave. You can press the electronic wave, which is really probably the best way. And then also, if you make a comment or question, we kind of ask that what you do very well, which is to state your name, because those that are dialing in by phone or from the public may not be able to see us, so they may not know who it is that's speaking. So due to the virtual nature of the meeting, we're going to have a lot of roll calls, and we'll start now just to take attendance. And Liz is getting really good at this. So Liz, why don't you begin by taking the roll call, and then we'll ensure that we have a quorum.
Okay. Atlas Ingebretson. Atlas Ingebretson. Arbor.
Here.
Chambliss. Council Member Chambliss. Cummings.
Here.
Ferguson.
Here.
Fredson.
Here.
Gonzalez. Gonzalez. Johnson.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Lilligren.
Here.
Lindstrom.
Here.
Musset.
Here.
Sterner. Vento.
Here.
Wolf. Zurin.
Present.
I'll go back. Is Chambliss here? Okay. And
I see she's logged in, but her audio isn't working for some reason.
I think
Okay.
that might be true.
okay,
She's
thank you.
logged.
Okay. And that's it.
I also
Okay.
see that she sent a chat, so she is here.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely. And then Councilmember Chambliss, when we take our votes, you can use the chat line if that's until we kind of figure out your audio. Great. Thank you. We do have a quorum. So first order of business is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. This is Ferguson.
Johnson seconds.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Atlas Ingebretson. Barber.
Aye.
Chambliss. Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez. Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musset.
Aye.
Sterner. Bento.
Aye.
Wolf. Chair Zelli.
Aye.
Zuren.
Aye.
All right, lovely. That motion is carried. And now the approval of the minutes. That is from the meeting on March 25th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? And a second.
Cummings move to approve.
Thank you.
Vento seconds.
Thank you. All righty. Liz.
Barber.
I'm on a Met Council meeting.
Aye.
Chambliss. Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez. Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musset.
Aye.
Bento.
Aye.
Chair Zelli.
Aye.
And Zuren.
Aye.
So the minutes have been approved. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and there are no items in the consent agenda. So I'll move on to the reports of the standing committees. There is no report from the Community Development Committee, no report from the Environment Committee. There is from the Management Committee. So maybe Council Member Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one item from the Management Committee. It is business item 2020-103, legal contracts for risk management workers' compensation claims. The business item seeks council authorization to negotiate and execute 3 contracts for legal defense related to workers' compensation claims in an aggregate amount not to exceed $1,425,000 over a 3-year term. Metropolitan Council conducted a formal solicitation for legal defense related to workers' compensation claims, working closely with the council's procurement department. After a review of 6 proposals, the review panel determined that there were 3 firms that have extensive knowledge in specific areas related to the council claims. Staff outlined the rationale for the firms as well as pricing. No questions were asked. And this item was approved at the Management Committee 2 weeks ago. Mr. Chair, the Metropolitan Council authorizes negotiation. I move that the Metropolitan Council authorizes the negotiation and executing 3 contracts in the amount not to exceed $1.425 million over a 3-year term in aggregate.
Johnson seconds.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Liz, call the roll.
Atlas Ingebretson, Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss. Chambliss voted aye. Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez, Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musset,
Aye.
Sterner, Bento, Bento,
Aye.
Wolf, Chair
Aye.
and Zuren.
Aye.
All right, that motion or recommendation passes. Now there is no report from the Transportation Committee. Next is the joint report of Environment and Community Development Committees. Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and my colleagues. The following 5 business items are comprehensive plans for communities connected to the regional wastewater system. They were all heard in Community Development Committee. These items were to be on the consent agenda for the Environment Committee, but due to the pandemic, the meeting was canceled. So with the chair's permission, these items were forwarded directly here to the full council meeting. And when I move the report, I'll move the Community Development Committee and the Environment Committee recommendations, acknowledging that the Environment Committee has not acted on them, but with the chair's permission, they're on the agenda for the full council tonight. For all the community, I'm sorry, Chair.
That's certainly you have my permission. That's great.
Thank you, sir. So, Mr. Chair, for all of the communities, the council staff found the 2040 plans conform to regional wastewater systems, are consistent with council policies, and are compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. So the first is business item 2020-55. It's the authorization of the 2040 comprehensive plan for Spring Lake Park and the approval of their comprehensive sewer plan. Mr. Chair, I move that Metropolitan Council adopt the attached advisory comment review record and take the following actions from the Community Development Committee. Authorize the City of Spring Lake Park to replace its 2040 comprehensive plan to effect, and from the Environment Committee to approve the Spring Lake Park's comprehensive sewer plan.
Great. Is there a second?
Cummings, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, Liz, call the roll.
Atlas Ingebretson, Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss, Chambliss votes aye. Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez, Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom, Musset,
Aye.
Aye.
okay,
Aye.
Sterner, Bento,
Aye.
Wolf, Chair
Aye.
Zuren.
Aye.
That action passes.
And Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next item is business item 2020-61. It's the authorization of the 2040 comprehensive plan for the city of Centerville and approve their comprehensive sewer plan. Mr. Chair, I move that the Met Council adopt the attached advisory comments and review record and take the following actions from the Community Development Committee. Authorize the city of Centerville to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect. Also revise the city's forecasts upwards as shown in tables 1 and 2 of the attached review record. And third, prior to final adoption, the city needs to update or revise the following items. A, correct inconsistencies between the text on the map 6.1 regarding roadway functional classification. B, correct the map reference regarding heavy commercial vehicle traffic counts. C, correct discrepancies in the plan regarding the number of forecasted employees served by SSTS in 2040. D, revise the plan to reflect extension of wastewater service to the Rice Creek Regional Park Reserve, including an intercommunity service agreement with Lino Lakes. E, incorporate the revised TAZ allocation table sent by email on August 5th, 2019. And F, include the approved local water supply plan as an appendix. The recommendation from the Environment Committee is to approve the City of Centerville's comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion? Thank you.
Vento seconds.
Thank you, Councilmember Vento. Any discussion? No. We can call the roll. I acknowledge that Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen had some technical difficulties, but is joining us now. So, Liz.
Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Barber.
Aye.
Chambliss.
She voted.
Chambliss votes aye. Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez. Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse.
Aye.
Sterner. Bento.
Aye.
Wolf. Chair-Zelli.
Aye.
And Zuren.
Aye.
Well, that motion passed. Councilmember Lilligren, another.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next item is business item 2020-69. It's the New Hope 2040 Comprehensive Plan and the Comprehensive Sewer Plan. So, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council adopt the attached advisory comments and review record and take the following actions. From the Community Development Committee, authorize the City of New Hope to place its 2040 Comprehensive Plan into effect and to advise the city to implement the advisory comments and review record for surface water management and water supply. Recommendation from the Environment Committee, approve the City of New Hope's comprehensive sewer plan.
Second by Lee.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, Liz.
Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Barber.
Aye.
Chambliss. Chambliss voted aye. Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez. Johnson.
Aye. Sorry.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse.
Aye.
Sterner. Bento.
Aye.
Wolf, Terzelli,
Aye.
Duran.
Aye.
That motion is carried. Councilmember Lilligren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next business item is business item 2020-72. It's the 2040 Comprehensive Plan and Comprehensive Sewer Plan for the City of Jordan. Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council adopt the attached advisory comments and review record and take the following actions from the Community Development Committee. Authorize the City of Jordan to place its 2040 Comprehensive Plan into effect. Also revise the city's forecast upward as shown in Table 1 of the attached review record, and revise the city's affordable housing allocation to 294 units. Also advise the city that A, the council's authorization of the city's plan refers only to the 2040 planning period. Any references to post-2040 growth areas in Sand Creek Township are not included in any actions taken by the council. The city may not put those portions of the plan into effect. And B, at such time as the city acquires jurisdiction of the lands planned for future urbanization in township areas, either through an orderly annexation agreement or annexation by ordinance, the city will need to submit appropriate plan amendments to the council for further review and action. And from the Environment Committee to approve the City of Jordan's comprehensive plan.
Is there a second?
Barber seconds.
Any discussion? All right, Liz?
All right. Atlas Ingebretson. Barber.
Aye.
Chambliss. Chambliss voted yes. Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez. Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Hussein.
Aye.
Sterner. Bento.
Aye.
Wolf. Terzelli.
Aye.
Duran.
Aye.
Well, that motion carried. And Councilmember Lilligren, is this your final?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last but not least for tonight and the Joint Committee's report, it's business item 2020-85. It's to authorize a 2040 comprehensive plan for the city of Hamburg and approve their comprehensive sewer plan. Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council adopt the attached advisory comments and review record and take the following actions from Community Development Committee. Authorize the city of Hamburg to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect and to advise the city to implement the advisory comment in the review record for surface water management, and from the Environment Committee to approve the city of Hamburg's comprehensive sewer plan.
A second?
Barber seconds.
Thank you. Any discussion? Liz?
Okay. Atlas Ingebretson.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye.
Chambliss. Chambliss voted yes. Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez. Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musset.
Aye.
Sterner. Bento.
Aye.
Wolf. Terzelli.
Aye.
Duran.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That motion carried. And thank you, members of the committee and Councilmember Lilligren for all that work.
Thank you,
Next
Mr.
item is the other business, and we have an information item. We have two information items, but the first is on the construction workforce development model, which I know is something we've talked about and an important priority. So, Aaron Koski, welcome, Aaron, and the screen has changed, so you're there ready to present. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair Zelli, council members, and staff. I'm hoping you can hear me okay?
Yep, we can.
I'm excited to provide an update on the Building Strong Communities program. Briefly, my name is Aaron Koski. I'm the Senior Manager of Workforce Development, 12-year employee, first 9 years in the Office of Equal Opportunity. And during that time, we launched a number of workforce programs for Metro Transit and the Met Council, including the MTT program, as well as construction programs. In 2018, the Workforce Development Department was created and was placed inside of HR. Our primary focus is creating workforce training programs for frontline technical positions. And with the start of the Southwest Light Rail Civil contract in 2019, our department was asked to restart its construction apprentice preparatory program with the Minneapolis Building and Construction Trade Council. So the Building Strong Communities program is a collaboration between, again, the council, the project or project's owner, and the Minneapolis Building and Construction Trade Unions. This model is really focused on creating trade career opportunities and pathways for underrepresented communities in the metropolitan area. While in many cases, individuals get a construction job with a contractor, but always professionals in construction trades rely on the individual union trades themselves for the training, development, and the careers that they have and share. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, there was a previous effort in 2017 to combine the efforts with the council and the applicable trades to create this pathway. Our first effort resulted in 16 graduating with 100% placement offers. And then we've learned some important lessons that we implemented into this next version, which we launched this year. I'll get more into the details on how we applied our lessons, but I want to highlight the first one is the LRT build was launched in anticipation of an earlier construction start date that never materialized. Despite that limitation, we were successful, but it proved the point that for longevity's sake, it was best not to tie a workforce model with a single project. Next slide, please, Greg. This is a graduation from 2017, and there are a number of gentlemen on the stage that are still pursuing their journeyman level. They're still in their apprenticeship programs. Anecdotally, one individual decided not to pursue his career in the trades and is currently a Metro Transit bus operator. Next slide. Unfortunately, this slide is only viewed on a computer screen. It does warrant probably a larger placemat, but this really is a comprehensive program model. At the top, I'll start at the top. The model establishes 5 distinct phases, beginning with outreach and culminating up to a year and a half later of still supporting individuals who make it into an apprenticeship. The arrow in the center represents the participants as they move through the phases. The flanks of the arrow, the top and the bottom, are designed to represent 2 partners, Emerge and Five Skies. Briefly, Five Skies is a tribal Native American workforce training organization, and Emerge is a local organization that works with the African American and East African communities. I'll talk about their unique role later. I want to point out the collection of 8 logos on the outreach phase, and that really were the partners that pushed applicants and interested individuals to our information sessions and our programming that the Met Council and the Building Trades jointly administer. In the following slides, I'll cover the remaining phases, but one now. Okay, go back, Greg, please. Thank you. At the bottom lists key program funders, project partners at the bottom middle, and then some foundational initial construction partners who have signed on as placement opportunities. You'll notice the London McCrossin joint venture logo, as well as the Highway Heavy logo, as well as vertical. Last note on this slide is the yellow star is supposed to represent where we are currently in the program, finishing in phase 2, and then we're on pause, COVID related, for phase 3, and I'll get to further COVID impacts. Next slide, Greg. These 10 trade locals identified here have voluntarily come together more than 9 months ago to begin laying the foundation of what we hope is a long-lasting, impactful pathway for non-traditional communities to get into not only the trades, but a variety of trades, representing the iron workers to sprinkler fitters to sheet metal. We anticipate these same 10 in the future. We hope new ones are added. Some may not need this, but we all are appreciative of these first 10 to take that step forward and are committed to making this a meaningful, productive pathway. The next 3 slides, I'm going to address the walk backwards and then forwards. These next 2 talk about the outreach efforts that we took, the council and the building trades collectively, to recruit. This is a sample of an advertisement that we ran in the city pages. Some information, directing people to information sessions. Rich, next slide, please. We had 4 information sessions in December, January, and a little bit in February. We held them at Clues, a partner, Latino population. Urban League, we had 2 sessions, and a very impactful session was, as advertised here, with the Asian Economic Development Association. This ad was created and run in the Hmong Times. We also used community radio like Radio Ray to promote the information sessions in January. And through these efforts, we collected around about 100, 120 inquiries. Next slide. So those 120 materialized to about 70 to start, and over a period of a number of weeks, we entered the phase 2, which is the readiness phase, where we really prepare these individuals for a new career, to learn a new skill, to have their personal life in order to make that difficult transition to a career that's foreign to them. Curriculum includes 15 hours of emotional intelligence empowerment. Some math was provided, foundational math review. And then most importantly, we prepare them for the interviews. I referenced in a previous slide the 5 Skies and Emerge community partners. They had funding and the abilities to recruit from their own communities and provide their own customized training. Emerge provided some higher level math refresh courses, and 59 individuals completed the readiness phase. And for the council and Emerge and Building Trades Group, they received a stipend of $400. 5 Skies has their own independent funding where they do provide a stipend. Next slide, Greg. Here's roughly 3/5 of the participants. Again, Twin Cities Rise was our contracted provider to provide these emotional intelligence sessions. You see a collection of a group of about 18, 19, 8, and then in the top right represents most of a female-only cohort that we put together last minute. Not pictured in this slide is the Emerge cohort of about 10 individuals and the 5 Skies cohort of about a dozen individuals. During this COVID epidemic, we are pausing, and I'll get to that in a second. Next slide. So when it is safe to return and restrictions are lifted, the program as designed transitions to a 4 to 5 week period of a blend of classroom, site visits at construction sites, and most importantly, they take a day visit to each of the 10 participating trades at their Joint Apprenticeship Training Center. The curriculum used is developed by the unions, called the Multi-Core Craft Curriculum, administered by Northampton Community College. And the JTCs are around the metropolitan and Minnesota area. And during those day visits, the participants will get hands-on exposure and, more importantly, understand the unique elements, requirements, and journey that each apprenticeship program contains. We want, by the end of this 4 or 5 weeks, these individuals to get a sense of what these different trade opportunities represent, the amount of the culture, the amount of training and ongoing work. We want them to make an informed and thoughtful decision about the next step. And then at the end of this process, all parties who engaged with these participants will participate in structured follow-up sessions to ensure that no barriers are left unaddressed and the participants have all that they need to make a career out of their decision. Now, next slide. So when we suspended the program roughly March 17th, due to COVID, March 16th, excuse me, the high level of engagement we had to that point, the high caliber of participants that we met, and the funding has allowed us to transition to distance learning during this 6 to 8 week period. This is voluntary, and fortunately, most of our participants are able to be introduced to some trade-specific curriculum, whether that be tape measure math. We'll be mailing out tape measures, as well as getting a better sense of what the histories of unions are in Minnesota, as well as the math and technical skills involved in each of the participating trades. We've had great participation. Fortunately, we have the staff resources due to the slowdown of our transit work to really ensure that all 47 participants have frequent interaction with program staff to encourage and to provide feedback. And also during this time, their participation will result in an additional $400 stipend. A lot of our participants are impacted by the economic uncertainty. So we're very happy to allow that as a chance to stay close and remain engaged. Final slide. I talked about after the program is done and before we get into supporting the apprentice, it's the placement, and that will be impacted by this COVID. The uncertainty of the construction industry, how long this pandemic will impact employment and everything, has required us to shift from an immediate placement to a multi-week, multi-month placement. So resources will be allocated appropriately and expectations adjusted appropriately to make sure that for those who can wait and remain in ready position are able to take advantage whenever the opportunity comes to start their career in the construction trades. And with that, I thank you for your time and happy to take any questions.
Aaron, I'll just jump in. This past month, obviously, it's been pretty disruptive, but not as much for construction trades where many projects continue to march forward. Is there some immediate placement now that since there seems to be work going on, and where's that stand with this group?
Yes, construction has been able to continue. There has been some impacts, as far as I understand, in the residential sector in some sectors. What is preventing us from moving forward at this point is the inability for this group to come together in a classroom facility and to visit these training centers. So I will not speak for the construction industry. I know they are concerned about the entire economy getting back going 100%. So hopefully it's not as impactful, but we are prepared for it.
Right. Other questions from council members? Trying to look. I'm not sure I can see the hands, but
Charlie Linnea had her hand raised.
all right. Councilmember Atlas Ingerbitson, can you unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. And I just want to share a deep appreciation for the work that you shared with us. There's a lot of really wonderful practices that you're engaging in this work, and it is so important. I've had the chance, not through my role at the Met Council, but through my role at Youth Prize, to work with a number of different building firms who are desperately concerned about the number of folks entering the trades and the diversity of the folks entering the trades, as we support organizations that train young people in the same types of fields. You're using so many wonderful practices. The one thing that I didn't hear about was, what are the trade unions doing to kind of increase their capacity to work with more diverse communities?
Chair Zelley, Council Member Ingrid Britson. I would like to point to what I know, and that is the amount of support that this model has received from not only the union leadership, but the actual members of the unions. They have even pushed me and my team to think outside the box on how they can translate the interest into actual increased apprenticeships. And I think you're going to see some maybe more innovative things that will be fleshed out during the next 3 months that we can kind of codify and then replicate for future years. But I just know from my experience, I've been very, very, I've seen their interest and their efforts firsthand. To answer your question specifically, I can report that a number of trades are very readily talk about their increased number of apprentices. That is very clear that they're very proud to report that their numbers have increased dramatically. I would really hope that someone from the trades could better articulate those increases.
Thanks, Aaron. This is Councilmember Abdi Muse.
Go ahead, Councilmember Mushi.
So I just would like to thank Aaron for his great work. I also know he's working through the community. He's doing a phenomenal job, and he has a really amazing cultural sensitivity. So on the second question, one of the things that I'm aware of is the partnership between, say, Tool and Building Trades. And that was really a very good partnership that resulted into channeling a lot of underserved immigrant, workers to the building trades. So I don't know if you can do, if there's a room for duplicating that success and doing more of that, because sometimes myself as a labor guy, sometimes traditional labor unions have a really, really reaching out, to immigrant community, but organizations who are based in the community who can work with them can play that role, like say too. That was really, worker at the center that focus on Latino community and Latino workers, but they really play a key role in channeling so many workers to a good, well-paying jobs.
Right.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Anybody else? We had it. Oh, yes, you are. There you are. Go ahead, Councilmember Fredson. I thought you were adjusting your laptop there. That was.
Thank you, Chair. So this is where my work for a construction workers union for my day job and then service on the Met Council sort of comes together. But I just want to say, job well done to Aaron and to your team. There is high praise from folks like Jenny Winkler, who used to work for the Minneapolis Building Trades Council and now works for the Operating Engineers, Joe Fowler, who's the business manager of the Labor's Local 563, which is one of the locals that belongs to the union that I work for. And then our training center director, This is the kind of model that I can just say as from the billing trade standpoint is a really effective partnership with community, with the trades, that has the buy-in from the trades that will result in more folks getting into skilled construction careers. Met Council's role in building this model, I don't think can be understated, or overstated. I mean, you should just feel really proud, and I hope everybody on the council shares that pride in this program. I think the key piece here, from at least from the trades leaders that I hear from, is just this partnership in terms of the community groups providing, one, the funding, the soft skill training, professional training, helping people obtain driver's licenses, and then we rely on the billing trades programs to provide the hands-on training in the training centers. And so we just need to continue to evaluate this as a Met Council, as in partnership with the trades and the community groups, to grow and scale it to meet the need. And I just think that this is going to continue to grow bigger and better, and serve as a model for the country.
Great, thank you. Great comment. Also, we had a comment from our HR director who pointed out this is a great program for all Met Council construction, not just the Southwest Light Rail or some of the other big ones. This is going to help our entire region. Any other comments or question? Yeah, Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say to echo Councilmember Fritzon's praise, and I really want to commend the staff, and I'm excited that we can hopefully not just scale, but also replicate it in other areas of our work. And this is really exciting, and I think that levels the playing field for a lot of folks, and I appreciate the equity outreach in this program.
Thank you. Anyone else? Pause for a minute. Aaron, clearly you've gotten a lot of interest and support from our council, and it really shows how important this work is and how much it's appreciated. I will say for myself, even talking to some of the leaders of contractors, they're actually, they have a great benefit, because here's a pipeline for talent that they need, and the fact that it is more diverse, and I've certainly seen that over the past 8 years, that there seems to be a cultural shift and recognize that this is the workforce of the future, and need this kind of program. So kudos to you, and we want to stay engaged and hear how it works as we come out of this little pause here that is frustrating many people.
Thank you, Chair Zelli, council members. I'll pass along your gratitude to the team, and I look forward to updating you in the future.
Come back when they're actually meeting in person and engaged in the apprenticeships.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Well, we have one other item today, and that's a lot which is on all of our minds, which is in the midst of our stay-at-home or out in critical jobs, COVID-19 impacts Met Council in so many ways. And I have to say, I have learned a lot on a daily basis. We have a command structure that had been planned for, but never really thought to be useful in a pandemic. And we're going to hand this off to our assistant regional director, our deputy regional director, but it's also I call her the commander, but I think there's another formal title for the head of our command structure. But there's literally a meeting every day that happens at noon, and most days I listen in, because you learn what's going on in the different divisions. So we're going to kind of have a little presentation from Mary Bogey, who will actually include, in a sense, what we do every day with our division directors, kind of reporting in. But I think you also have a PowerPoint, which might have been sent. I think it was sent out in advance. But Mary, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Chair Zelli, and the PowerPoint is attached to the agenda, and I see that Greg is putting it up on the screen here. So, as Chair Zelli said, we're going to bring you through a little bit of what we do on a daily basis with our incident command. I want to talk a little bit as well about some of the fiscal impacts that we're seeing. So, Greg, if you advance to the first slide there. As you know, we activated our incident command structure, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means. We are doing a daily situation report. We call it a sit rep. We've been doing that daily now for a couple of weeks. It feels like we've kind of gotten in a groove with our situation reports. You know, we really activated and came together to respond to the situation that we're in. And it feels like now it's time for us to shift from respond, get ready, look at what our service is to, okay, how do we live in this environment now for quite some time, you know, at least through April and into May, and maybe longer than that. So as we are responding to the COVID-19, you also gave the regional administrator a little bit of ability to be a little more nimble in our response by passing our peacetime emergency policy, and that kind of aligns her with the governor's peacetime emergency order. I was going to talk about a little bit about our employees. We're doing an awful lot of teleworking now, but we've also got some on-site employees, so we'll talk about kind of what that mix is and what that means. For COVID leave, I have adopted a policy that's very similar to what the state is doing for their COVID leave, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then a little bit of changes to our self-insurance coverage that's been impacted by COVID. As we walk through this, we're going to give you a sit rep, and I've asked the directors and general managers to play the roles of the operations chiefs and walk through kind of a summary of what we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks in our sit rep reports. And I've told them I'm going to grade them with how well they do, because the operations chiefs in our command structure have done a fantastic job. And I expect that the GMs and directors will do the same. So they'll talk about kind of the operational decisions that we're making, what's been happening over the last 2 weeks. And then we'll follow that up with just some of the fiscal impacts that we're seeing. It's not an exhaustive list. We don't have all the answers yet. We've got some federal funding that we know is becoming available, but the details are still flowing out about that. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Greg, next slide. So this slide shows you what our incident command structure looks like. And I will say that this follows the National Incident Management System structure. We have had this structure in place for quite some time. We're lucky enough that we do have a continuity of operations group that sits in our information services division. We've practiced this plan in different parts. We have never, however, activated the entire plan. So this is the first time we've activated the entire plan. When we've activated it in the past, it's been in relation to a specific incident, like the bridge collapse. So we activated the transit portion because they played a role in that response. What's different about a pandemic plan than the way we've activated parts of our plan in the past is they've been specific incidents that had a start and end. So we have an incident that had a very fluid start, and it's going to have a very fluid end. And so we will be in this command structure for a much longer period of time than we have been in the past as we've activated portions of the plan. But again, we are very fortunate that past councils and past administrations valued our continuity of operations planning, that we had a plan that was put together from H1N1 that we took and we did some tweaking to. And we've been able to activate this plan and really get us rolling within, a couple. We've been doing this for 2.5 weeks now. It feels like months, but really got us moving. So let's take a look at what the structure looks like. In the middle there, you see the incident commander. That's the other hat that I wear. And as incident commander, I'm responsible for all the incident activities, including the development of strategies, tactics, ordering and releasing of resources, all the way throughout this emergency response, and as we start our recovery as well, because this isn't just an incident, but we also have to figure out how we recover from this incident, how we bring people back into the organization, what our workforce, how we work in the future. We've become really nimble in doing some telecommuting. I expect that we'll continue to do some telecommuting even after the order is lifted. On the left side of the chart, you'll see the executive policy group. That includes our executive leaders, the council chair, regional administrator, deputy regional administrator. That's another one of my hats. Director of communications, our advisors from finance, the chief financial officer, another one of my hats. Director of risk management, general counsel, advisors for logistics, procurement, and human resources. And then advisors from the operations. So the general managers from environmental services and Metro Transit, chief of staff from Metro Transit, director of CD and MTS, and then our chief information officer. So the role of the executive policy group is not the day-to-day operations. The role of the executive policy group is keeping us agile and giving us kind of a best general approach to emergency situations, and helping us with response and recovery in terms of economic, political, and legal and social implications. And so the bulk of our response plan really falls to the right on this chart. And that's to the chiefs that we have in finance, logistics, in particular our operations chiefs and our planning chiefs. So these are the folks that fill out our daily situation reports and report in those daily meetings. The operations chiefs fill out the bulk of that report, and they're talking about what's happening on a day-to-day basis, what decisions are being made on a day-to-day basis, and what impacts we're seeing to our, in particular, our essential priority 1, priority 2 services. So we really focus on those services that are critical for us to deliver as the Met Council. The finance and logistics chiefs also focus on how do I get resources to each of the operations so that they can perform their jobs. As you know, we're competing across the nation with other governments and private industry for the goods that we need to respond and the supplies that we need to respond to the pandemic. Finance chief looks at fiscal impacts as well as getting our bills paid while we telecommute, getting our payroll done while we telecommute. And so all of those kind of day-to-day things that have to occur for us to, again, be able to pay vendors, pay our employees, keep our operations running. And then the planning chiefs play a really big role for us in the daily situation reports. So as we're giving these situation reports, you can imagine that we come up with another number of issues that we don't have an answer for. That big list of issues, we give them to the planning chiefs, and the planning chiefs are responsible for finding who's responsible for developing the answer and then resolving each of those issues so that we can continue to move along in our roles. In the middle there as well, you see our incident command staff. Our public information officer is Terry Dressen. She is new to the council, but not new to health industry. She came to us from a health background, and for that reason, she got stolen by the Minnesota Department of Health. And so she's playing a dual role. She's doing communications both for the state as well as for the council here. So that has pluses and minuses. We get information that we might not get as quickly by having somebody that's in the know, but it also makes her a little bit less available. And so we're really relying on Michelle Fury as well as her alternate here to do our council communications. Judd and Brooke are playing their liaison role with the legislature. Our safety officers play a role in helping us to define different policies that might need to change and things that we need to do. And then again, we have a COOP support staff, continuity of operations planning, Kathy Matter and Lisa Blond, that really have been invaluable to me in being able to activate this team and keep us going with the tools that we need to use to stay informed. Next slide. So a little bit about our employees and where we have them out and about. So the top part there talks about our employees who are teleworking versus those who are on site by division. You can see that in most of in CD, MTS, and RA, most of our staff are teleworking, but of course in environmental services and Metro Transit, we have a significant number of staff that are providing essential services that need to be on site. For RA, it looks like we have a lot of people on site. Those really aren't on site. That about 38 of those are our IT staff, and they need the ability to come on site, but for the most part, they are teleworking. That also includes our command structure staff. Again, most of us are teleworking, but we need the ability to come on site should that be needed. So that number is actually much lower for RA, and includes a couple of staff in our accounts payable area that need to actually print the checks, people that need to stop in and get the mail, things like that. So a much smaller group. That middle section shows you what we're experiencing in terms of COVID leave. So we are being pretty open with our COVID leave, much like the state is in terms of what it can be taken for. As you know, we have one positive test here at the council that came in environmental services and in our wastewater treatment plants. But we have a number of people who are in isolation. Those could be positives in there. We don't know. When somebody is experiencing symptoms, who's feeling ill, we allow them to take 2 weeks of COVID leave, and then we hope to be able to follow up with them within that 2 weeks to determine, did you have symptoms? Were you able to get a test? Those kinds of things, but we don't know that information when we first put them out, and it's very difficult for people to get tests right now. And so until they're experiencing symptoms that are of a higher level, they often aren't able to get those tests. So we do expect that some of those people will come back into the workforce after a couple of weeks, and we expect some will likely be out for a little bit longer. COVID leave is also available if you're providing care to somebody who has COVID or who is at risk. And so we've got a number of people utilizing that care. And then as well for our people that need to be off to care for their school-age children. So you can see kind of how those numbers are being reported there. We're still kind of working on how we can display and share this information with staff. We've got a lot of rumors, as you might expect, about people who may have it, or are you telling me everything? And we do have a protocol in place, and I think that you saw that as we had our first case, that for notifying and for cleaning and sanitizing. And so we're trying to share more of that information with our staff. We've held a couple of kind of town hall meetings that we began this week, and that's, you know, one of the number one questions is we want more information about that. And so we're trying to clean this data up a little bit. That takes communication with people who are out of the office to find out what their status is. And so we hope to clean that up a little bit and be able to share that more widely with staff. There is a balance there that we have to play about what's private information and what can be shared. But if we're just sharing kind of raw numbers without names and kind of keeping them in big general categories, we think we can share some of that. So in terms of our insurance coverage, we are a self-insured medical plan, and we have opened up our insurance coverage to cover the COVID test and any care related to having COVID. And so that's really following suit with what the state is asking insurers to do. And so we followed suit in our plan. We are very adequately reserved in our self-insured fund. As you know, we are actually even doing a distribution from the self-reserved fund, and we have significant ability to manage additional claims. So I'm feeling very comfortable about that. I also will say that we implemented a soft hiring freeze We know that we're going to come out of this situation with some financial difficulties, and we want to make sure that as we're looking at hires, that we are making sure that they're critical hires, and want to position ourselves as we come out of this and as we go into the next legislative session, and that we are doing what we can to hold our costs. So with that, I'm going to invite our directors and general managers to walk through a summarized sit rep with you, and we'll start with Lisa Barajas.
Thank you. I'm Lisa Barajas, Community Development Director. I just want to start off first with saying that I have been very impressed with how quickly our staff have adapted. We moved to a telework environment and making those adjustments even before our governor's stay-at-home order. We largely continue to offer the level of service and responsiveness that we had previously provided to our government partners, to our HRA residents, and our landlords, albeit now via virtual platform. We have had to make some changes in our operations in order to reduce exposure of our staff early on before the stay-at-home order, and then in response to the governor's order and to account for pandemic impacts. So in our HRA work, we've needed to limit our unit inspections to protect our staff and our residents. We've been focusing on emergency maintenance in the units that we own and move-ins that we've had in process already with our residents. Our staff have been experimenting with virtual inspections, a different way of doing that. Having some success there, we're really excited about the possibilities of that type of work and continue to work through some of those obstacles and hurdles in that. We've had to delay some of our work, like our Parks Visitor Study, because that work requires a lot of in-person and in-person contact. We also expect that we would see kind of distortions in our park usage right now due to the pandemic that would be outside of normal use. And that includes the demographics of who's out in the parks and what parks they're using. So we have delayed that, and we'll pick that work up again in 2021 in order to give us a better picture of a parks visitation. Some of our other work has taken a temporary pause as we pivot to more online and virtual engagement rather than the in-person engagement strategies that we had planned. And that's everything from putting out our Livable Communities grants, which are still out and available, but engaging with potential applicants, to engaging with our residents and the HRA around changes in policies this year as well. So we're working on switching our platforms to how we do that engagement more effectively and ensuring that we can hear from everybody that we need to hear from and get the input that we need before moving forward, as well as providing a level of service that our customers have come to expect from us. We continue to work through with our existing grantees on their grants, receiving their draw requests, getting those payments out the door. So we do still have staff from time to time that come in to make sure we're not receiving things in paper, but if we are, getting that circulated, getting grant agreements signed, getting payments moving. Our current application rounds for all of our grants continue to run on schedule, with the exception of the one we run jointly with Minnesota Housing. That one, that deadline has been extended to really account for some changes that developers are experiencing with the pandemic. So giving a little more time for folks to get their applications in. And where we can, we've been working with our grantees and extending existing grant agreements in order to allow them to complete their work, because we understand that there will be some delays in some of that due to the pandemic. So again, I will just summarize, our team has been making some really impressive moves in keeping that great service to the region. They've been quick to adapt to this new telework environment. And we're excited for some of getting some experience with using these tools under our belt, and hoping to continue a lot of that going forward, even when we're not required to do so. So I'll pass it on to my fellow directors, but certainly we'll be happy to have any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's move on to Environmental Services and Lisa Thompson.
Good afternoon. This is Lisa Thompson, General Manager with Environmental Services. It's been a very busy week, 3 weeks. We've been setting up additional communications, additional measures to support social distancing, and additional cleaning measures to also prevent the spread. Over 80% of our workforce is still showing up at the workplace. So I think especially the communications part's been really important to help deal with the stress of the situation. We have our own incident command that connects up to the council's top level incident command. So we follow each daily council incident command meeting where our operations chief reports out on our status. Then about an hour later, we have our own ES incident command structure meeting. We have, with the number of facilities we have, in addition to our overall ops chief, we have 7 more facility chiefs. And then we have our other incident command support staff. And we go through what we share at the Met Council Incident Command and go into further detail. This is where we make sure we've got enough staff to get the critical work done, that we're aware if there's any supply shortages or difficulties we might have in getting supplies. We're paying attention to illness responses. So as you might imagine, the rumor mill gets pretty crazy when someone calls in sick, even if it's not for COVID-related symptoms. If we do have COVID-related symptoms, we jump right on a deep cleaning process. We restrict that area from any additional staff entering until the cleaning process has been cleared. We make sure we've identified any staff that need to be isolated to prevent any further spread of the COVID. We have our own inventory of masks that are required for PPE purposes and doing their job. We're keeping close eye on that inventory because we know those are hard to obtain. And we're also making sure that that inventory doesn't get used by employees for general COVID prevention. We're crossing our fingers. One of the things we're watching closely is the river levels. So we are in the mode of having to do effluent pumping at the Metro plant. We think that that'll last about 2 weeks. The river is dropping, so if Mother Nature cooperates, we'll hopefully not have to set up for full-on flood coverage. As you know, we've had 1 positive COVID, but I'm happy to share this individual is improving. That makes us all really happy because this is a long-term employee, and as you might know, were very upset about that. Adjusting our staffing coverage to lower the risk of losing an entire crew due to a positive is something we're really focused on and trying to figure out how do we either split the crew or separate them enough so that if one does develop COVID, that we don't have to isolate an entire crew. We are continuing to do our capital projects. So the staff have done an extensive review of those projects and they've looked where there's more social contact risks and they put in measures to reduce that, as well as made sure that there are strong communications with the contractors. So if they have any illnesses that we are aware, some of these contract projects go on inside our facilities. We're taking extra measures to keep the contractors isolated from our employees, again, to prevent the spread. I just have to say that we've had such a great deal of teamwork and collaboration taking place that I couldn't be more grateful for the proactive thinking and the extra efforts that staff have been providing. I think that we clearly will get through this, but it is taking a toll on people, energy levels, long hours. And I think about our plants, they have all their regular work to do. So their work hasn't dropped in terms of running those facilities, but there's so much more of the human resources side of things to deal with to help make sure that we're doing all the right things to keep our employees safe and healthy. I'm complete.
All right, Mary, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks, Nick.
All right, so Nick Thompson, Director of Metropolitan Transportation Services. So I'll talk about kind of the 3 functions of the division: transit operations, planning, and finance. First want to extend my thanks to all my staff. They are basically on a given day all working remotely, like many. We've had to redesign. The technology has really come through for us, and even our jobs in Metro Mobility, like customer service agents on the phone, we were really jobs we never envisioned could be worked remotely. We've got those to work, and so it's been a great help. And also extend to our contractors, our transit providers who are out and working and being really flexible. Everybody's been real creative, flexible, and trying to be positive in this situation. Starting with our transit services, like Metro Transit, we're really trying to make changes in operations that minimize that risk of exposure to our customers and our drivers, especially with like our Metro Mobility customers who are vulnerable, a very vulnerable population. Our drivers there too, they continue to provide door-through-door service. They escort our customers, and so that's a high risk there. And they are also, but I think it's going well. We're reporting really high attendance by our contracted drivers. No major issues there. We're continuing to provide every trip that is requested on Metro Mobility or Transit Link, but with Metro Transit and the council really pushing that people only use the service for essential trips. And our customers have been responding very well. Our ridership is down on Metro Mobility between 70 and 80% from the normal. And so we're down to trips there that are often just for medical, a little bit for grocery, and some for work, but they've really dropped. Transit Link or Dial-A-Ride is down 80 to 90%. In talking with the suburban transit providers, their main service is express service. Their express routes, like Metro Transit for express, I think ridership is down 95%, 90 to 95% on those routes. So the public is definitely responding in these changes and on some of our services, trying to hopefully be just essential trips, though we do know not all are essential. Some of the major changes we've made for Metro Mobility and Transit Link is we went in third week of March, we went from a shared ride service to a single ride, where we pick up the passenger at their work or at their location and take them directly to where they want to go instead of picking up other passengers, and then cleaning the vehicles after these trips. So that really minimizes the risk of contact with other passengers, or eliminates the risk with other passengers, and reduces the amount of time that they are on the bus considerably. We've also recently, along with Metro Transit, allowed drivers to wear masks, not medical grade, but masks, cloth masks, and we'll be providing them as the council as soon as the order comes in, either this week or next. But they've been allowed to wear masks also if they had their own or their contractor provided them. We did not make any changes to hours of service for Metro Mobility. They've really, to just the core hours, there isn't very many late night or overnight trips being made at this time, but we've allowed those to continue to be made because some trips like dialysis can be very early in the morning, and so we want to make sure that they can make those trips. I think our biggest changes on the Metro Mobility and Transit Link has been our food delivery model that we've implemented. We started off with just allowing customers to order food from a grocery, and then we would take their order number and pick up and deliver those groceries for them. We're not charging the customers for that service. It saves the customer a trip to and from the grocery. It also limits their exposure to the public. And then it also saves us in that we're only making one trip instead of two for that trip. There's some barriers to that service, in that, like anybody has been hearing, that there are some delays in getting an order filled at a grocery store. And it's becoming a bigger issue. So we've expanded that to now also include food shelf delivery. So we are partnering with local food shelves, as particularly with our Metro Mobility service right now, where we will take and deliver any food that a food shelf has identified boxes of food for, and a list of customers and addresses. We have started that delivery. We started that late last week for food shelves within Ramsey and Hennepin County. And this week we are expanding that to the other 5 counties and using TransitLink to provide that food shelf delivery for the contractors there. And in those 5 surrounding counties, we are partnering with mobility manager staff that are part of the county administration so that they're finding the connection for us for delivering for food. So we're thinking this is a very important step for food access and food security for our customers, but we've also not limited to just being a Metro Mobility or TransitLink customer. We'll use those services to deliver food for any of the customers that have requested that food from the food shelf. So we're starting to ramp that up very quickly. This Wednesday, we did a major partnership with Salvation Army, and they have multiple locations where they're requesting delivery from. So we expect that to grow. As part of that, we're coordinating with the Governor's Food Security Council that is really taking on this issue on all levels statewide, and we're kind of the point as the council, we're being the point for the metro area food delivery from kind of that last mile to the customer. The added benefit of this is it creates work for our contractors. With the dramatic drop in ridership, they were faced with a big issue of whether they should retain their drivers and staff. And we knew that we needed those drivers there in place for when ridership picked up, and we have to provide those rides for disability. So this is it is serving a very big need that is out there in the public, and also protecting some of our contractors and our service model so that we're ready to go when ridership resumes on that service. In terms of our other staff, our finance staff has been getting all our grants out and finance contracted as normal. They are now gearing up for the Federal CARES Act and the funding that will come through there to make sure that we are able to, for our contracted providers, document all our costs and get reimbursement where it makes sense. And also we'll be working closely with the suburban providers. Mary will break out later how much funding is eligible for them. So make sure that that process is as efficient and seamless as possible. And lastly, on our planning side, our planners, 2 major things that they're continuing to work on. One is the regional solicitation, which we did, TAB did ask or delay the application till May. And next week, they're going to decide if they're going to keep that May deadline for application for regional funds. I believe, talking with our local partners, we did a survey of those applicants and talked to staff at all the agencies. It does seem like most local agencies that we're going to submit applications are going to be able to meet that May deadline, which is good, which would mean that the federal funding through regional solicitation should be able to be allocated, identified for projects by the end of this calendar year. So that work, though had some delays due to COVID, I think is going to progress, and so that's good. The other one, last thing on transportation planning is our transportation policy plan, which we had been working through to get adopted by the council this year. We're still on that schedule, but obviously a fiscally constrained plan that looks out 20 years has a very different future than it did even 2 months ago. And so we do not plan to do any updates to the financial projections because there's just too much uncertainty at this time. But we are going to put language in the TPP that really addresses that this plan was mostly developed pre-COVID, and so that there's some uncertainty, and that as we get a better financial picture of the future, we will make amendments to that in the future. We've also, one of the big parts of the transportation policy plan is to identify what we work on over the next few years. And we're adding several tasks related to impacts on transportation funding and projects as a result of COVID. So that's 2 of the changes that are going to be part of it, what we thought was the transportation policy plan, so that and how that has been impacted. And so that's an update from FTS, and thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Let's move on to Metro Transit and Wes.
Thank you, Mary. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello. Okay, great. During the pandemic, Metro Transit has a very clear and focused objective, and that's to provide necessary services for essential trips in a manner that minimizes the risk of exposure for our riders and for our employees. Transit's one of the few remaining public services open where people can congregate, and we understand that we would not be providing transit service if not for the needs of essential workers and other riders who require transit to make essential trips to places like the grocery or the pharmacy. So this objective that's focused on essential services and risk mitigation is extremely important for us to do our part in slowing the spread of the pandemic and saving lives. I have daily meetings with my leadership team that spans operations, capital projects, communications, planning, and the Metro Transit Police Department, and Vince Pellegrin, Metro Transit's Incident Commander, and Brian Funk, our Operations Chief under the Incident Command structure, meet daily with the garage maintenance supervisors and managers. I want to emphasize that both of these daily meetings focus on what we can do to improve our essential services and to enhance our risk mitigation efforts. That's what our conversation is about all day long. We are aggressively communicating that transit is for essential travel only. I will say that this is a very difficult message for us to deliver. It's against our instincts. It's against everything that we have promoted in the past, but it's necessary to minimize risk to the essential riders, to minimize risk to our frontline staff, our operators and maintenance workers, and to also minimize risk to those riders who would ride for non-essential purposes. All are protected by minimizing travel. Our key public messages include transit is for essential travel only, and even for essential travel, we're asking people to use alternative modes of transportation if they can. If people use transit, we're asking that they make sure they practice social distancing and follow hygiene guidelines. And we are pushing these messages out through the website, social media, as we respond to media inquiries, through our signage, announcements on platforms, ride alerts, and just basically we're trying to use any means possible to emphasize essential only travel and risk mitigation recommendations to our customers. We are continuously looking for ways to keep these messages fresh and guard against complacency. And in keeping with new CDC guidelines, we will soon be asking riders to strongly consider covering their nose and mouth with non-medical masks or scarves or other coverings. In response to the series of governor's social distancing directives that culminated in a shelter-in-place order, we have instituted significant service reductions. While these changes have been made in significant part to align service with anticipated demand, these changes also enable us to provide a reliable service to essential workers, given the expected decline in the workforce that we're already seeing. Please do recall that we began our pandemic response with a significant operator shortage. Today's absentee report shows that we have 300 bus operators who are home because they are sick or they are self-quarantined due to chronic conditions that make them exceptionally vulnerable to the virus, or they're caring for a loved one who's sick, or they're caring for a child who is home from school. Then when we add this operator shortage, when we add the operator shortage that existed at the beginning of the pandemic, we are 400 bus operators, or approximately 28% down from what is required to deliver services under the pre-pandemic service schedule. For light rail, we're down about 40 operators, which represents about 40% of our operator needs during our normal operating service schedule. So our service reductions really began March 17th when we suspended overnight bus and rail service, primarily between the hours of 11 p.m. and 4:30 a.m. On March 25, we reduced services to a level of approximately 60% of our normal services, and that is typical to what you might see services being delivered on a day after a holiday. We did this by going through an operator pick, and according to the structure of our contract, it normally takes 5 weeks, and we did this in 5 days. It was an amazing effort by staff, through amazing cooperation by our operators. So currently we do have some extra bus operators under the 60% scenarios, but these operators are being strategically assigned to add trips to routes where ridership is still too dense to accommodate ideal social distancing guidelines. We're using per trip ridership data through the automated counters to identify where trips need to be added. But there are still buses every day with ridership that exceeds social distancing ideals. And we have concerns that this is increasingly due to non-essential riders. And we're cognizant that continued reductions in our workforce will impact our ability to add trips to these routes. So in addition, we are also prioritizing articulated buses on routes with the greatest ridership to again provide more space for social distancing. Having extra operators has also provided us with the flexibility to respond to ad hoc and specialized requests. For example, we've already provided multiple special buses to transport people experiencing homelessness to hotels. Early in the pandemic, Metro Transit also provided transportation for Minnesotans returning home after being released from the Grand Princess cruise ship. And then in addition, LRT service has been moved from 10-minute headways to 20-minute headways. North Star service has been cut to 2 trips both ways on weekdays and no weekend service. So this morning's ridership report shows that bus service is down about 69%, Blue Line is down 79%, Green Line is down 74%, North Star is down 97%, with a total system ridership down approximately 72%. And while we don't yet have reliable fare collection data, we know that fare collection will be down at a greater percent than ridership. I also want to report that we're doing everything we can to protect operators and others on the front lines of services. This includes our communication to the public that transit is for essential travel only. Fewer riders, again, means less exposure for our operators. We have asked staff to stay home if there are any signs of illness, and we've provided leave policy accommodations to support this request. We've instituted rear boarding on buses. Approximately 90% of our riders are now boarding from the back of the bus, but we continue to accommodate those with disabilities who require front door access. We are providing frequent cleanings and disinfecting of vehicles and work areas. For buses, we are fogging at least twice a week and wiping down buses at least once a week. For LRT, we are fogging and cleaning LRT vehicles nightly. And this includes not only fogging, but wiping down high-touch areas. And we're looking for more ways to increase bus and LRT cleaning. We're limited by workforce and we're limited by product availability. This is not an issue of money, it's an issue of workforce and product and supply chain. We are providing operators wipes at the beginning of each of their shifts so they can wipe down their areas and continue to keep their areas clean. We began allowing operators to use masks on March 13th, and at this time, masks were not recommended by the CDC, and operators provide their own masks. We did not provide masks because our N95 masks were being held at the request of the State Incident Command to be used for hospital settings, and since then, we've provided 9,000 N95 masks to the state's incident command structure to be distributed to hospitals and current hospitals and new hospitals that were being formulated to respond to the increased incidence of the virus. Before the new CD guidance on masks was issued just recently, we had already begun a partnership with ATU to order and distribute non-medical masks to all our operators, and these are arriving tonight or tomorrow, and we plan to distribute these then by Friday. Service reductions have also allowed us to better prioritize the use of buses with operator barriers already installed, and we're planning to install more barriers in the coming weeks. Porta potties have been added to places where public restrooms are no longer available for operator use. I believe Mary is going to be covering some of our funding challenges, so I'll pass that on to her. But one of our greatest challenges is that there are too many using transit for non-essential travel. And now more than ever, transit is the last door open. I can't say enough about our homeless action team and their efforts to find shelter for anyone who will accept it. But there are still many who are not accepting the shelter that is being offered, are still using transit, especially light rail transit, as a place to sleep and congregate. There are also many teenagers and young adults that are continuing to use transit to congregate. And too often, social distancing and hygiene guidelines are not being followed. For LRT, we believe there may be more non-essential trips being taken than essential trips. But the essential trips we're providing are important. And clearly, any issues we have with density on light rail would not exist if only essential travelers were using this service. We're also experiencing significant conduct violations on LRT. They have continued at our platforms, in our cars, and at our platforms, and in our transit stations. Most of our transit stations have been locked so long as they don't require access for transit services. In the last 2 weeks of March, light rail transit experienced biohazard incidents that exceeded what we would typically experience in an entire month. We've placed porta potties in locations all along the LRT routes, and I'm pleased to report that there have been promising reductions in the number of biohazard incidents over recent days. Very significant reductions. So obviously the placement of the porta potties has helped. Still, in the presence of non-essential travel riders, especially significantly compromises our ability to minimize the risk to those riders who are using our services for essential purposes. And these essential riders are often riding to workplaces where they have contact with many other people. And for healthcare workers especially, this includes contact with the most vulnerable in our region. So we're talking with MTS about other possibilities of using MTS services for essential workers. A plan has been being put together. I'll mention our other growing challenges, our workforce availability, I've already spoken to, and the supply chain for certain cleaning products. Our workforce capacity is still sufficient to provide current services, but workforce attendance is trending downward. Our supply chain outlook is fluid, and we continue to track current supplies in terms of days of inventory, and we continue to search for new suppliers or new supplies that can replace current inventory. But we are also looking forward. We understand the pandemic will likely bring permanent changes to our operating environment, and we've begun to think about that and develop strategies for recovery. Even in the short term, we're planning for a quarterly schedule pick for the June quarterly schedule pick that's effective in the middle of June. Because we don't know what June will bring us, we're planning to conduct 2 picks that will provide us with different service level options. Finally, I want to just finish by calling out the tremendous job of my leadership team in the coordination and execution of our pandemic response. I also want to call out the support we've received from regional administration for services like finance and IS and HR and procurement and risk management, and they've been so responsive to the needs of Metro Transit. I want to especially thank Vince Pellegrin, the Metro Transit Incident Commander, Brian Funk, our Incident Operations Chief, Chief Frizzell of our police department, who with their staff are working day and night to meet the service protection objectives that I referenced early on. But I think more than anything, I know that more than anything, we need to thank our operators, our facilities and garage maintenance workers, as well as the managers and supervisors of these activities, and of course, our police officers. They are clearly working on the front lines. We think about them daily here. We are trying to develop plans to mitigate their risk, but we know that they're there and they're working directly with the public, and that they are in the arena. And in comparison, we are really in the cheap seats watching and trying to support them the best I can. We want to inspire them, but they end up inspiring us. So please take every opportunity you can as well to thank our operators, to thank our facilities and garage maintenance workers, our police officers, and those that are serving the public directly. So with that, I'll pass it on back to Mary.
Thank you, Wes. So I'll wrap up with regional administration. And, while regional administration may not be on the direct line of delivering services, we play a really critical role, and staff have really stepped up to the plate. So we've talked a little bit about procurement already. We are competing across the nation for the resources that we need, in particular supplies and cleaning supplies for fighting COVID. We get an order in and it's immediately ready for it's distributed, and we're already in need of new. So we're looking in lots of different places to get different supplies that we need. We are utilizing combined government efforts to procure things that we need. We're really kind of going to every place that we can go. The health industry has priority, and that's followed by government essential services. And it seems the federal government gets more priority than the state governments. And so we continue to look for all avenues that we can to get the supplies that we need. But we're also following the protocols that we have to follow in purchasing our supplies and things, because we know that we won't be eligible for reimbursement unless we follow the protocols that we have for procurement. And so that means Buy America, where that's a federal purchase, things like that. So really pushing staff to follow do the right thing in the right way. But we're really becoming agile in how we do our procurements. Procurement also is responsible for notifying all the contractors that work with us about our protocols for if they have somebody who experiences the symptoms or has COVID, and what notification we expect from them. And so just a lot of different roles for them to play. Jody Jacoby and team have really stepped up to the plate to take on this role. In human services as well, as you can imagine, there's been a lot of just policy changes, from COVID leave to protocols for cleaning to notification. We're really hitting them as well with, each of us are experiencing different levels of anxiety in our life, and our Fit for Life and our Sand Creek programs we're really kind of trying to make those visible to our staff to help them through the times that we're experiencing and expect to experience. As I said, with a normal incident, we kind of have a start and an end, but with a pandemic, we have kind of a fluid start and a really fluid end. So we do expect that we'll be experiencing these things for quite some time, and we're shifting now from kind of get ready to how do we live within COVID for a while, and really wanting people to take a little bit of time off for themselves as well. And when we have a nice day, take that walk in the middle of the day as opposed to waiting until the end of the day. In finance, our deputy CFO, Marie Henderson, is leading that team. And gosh, getting your direct deposit in the mail is a big thing. And so we've done 2 payrolls now through telework, and staff are doing a fantastic job of getting information, timesheets and things like that into our systems. Even some of them that don't have connection, we have a way for them to email in and we do the entry for them. And then also just getting bills paid and getting bills paid timely. And one of the things we've seen with our AP staff is they're actually been more efficient in getting bills paid timely in a telework. And I'm not sure why that is, but that's what we're seeing. Just beginning to look at the financial impacts of what we're experiencing. We've got a system set up for tracking costs. That too is really fluid. We're learning new things about what funds might be available to us kind of on a daily basis, and how those things are being applied. I have a huge shout out to our technology team. We got people out the door and teleworking within a couple of weeks' time. We had new equipment to order. We had to set up that equipment for the individual user. They've come up with a geek squad, as we call them, our version of it, to help support home offices, something that we have never done before. We're providing 24/7 support from our help desk. We've expanded the help desk to handle the call volume. When you're working with somebody from a home office, those calls are a longer call. Just because you're trying to remote into a desktop, things like that. We are using every bit of technology that we have available to us and then some. In the same line, our Regional Administration Operation Chief, Scott Larson, he is new to the council, and he is on our enterprise content management, really responsible for SharePoint, but he's really helped us roll out Microsoft Teams as well. And so between the technology team and our operations chief, we're using technology that just a year ago we didn't even have. So Microsoft Teams and WebEx were not technology that was even in our normal language. And today it's a WebEx meeting, or it's a Teams meeting, or we're chatting on Teams. We've developed groups within teams so that each of the management teams can talk with their staff on a daily basis and stay connected. We are connecting in ways that we never did before, and they have been outstanding. They made a house visit out to the chair's home office to fix his home computer, fix his laptop. So we're doing things in many, many different ways. At the same time, we're also experiencing new threats. So be very vigilant about emails that you're getting. There are a lot of phishing emails coming out. Things they'll say are things like emergency, COVID in your area or in your city, or your response needed, those kinds of things. Please don't click on those links. Those are mostly just a ton of phishing emails. I even got one yesterday that looked like it was coming from Microsoft that said, hey, we've quarantined some emails for you. Click here to see what they are. An obvious phish. So please be careful with those things. Communications. So Terry Dressen and Michelle Freer are leading our communications team and the conversations that we have daily. They're coordinating daily with Governor Walz and with the state. As I said before, Terry Dressen has been directly supporting both our efforts here as well as the Minnesota Department of Health. Those daily communications that are coming out from Meredith to staff, and I know that you guys are getting them as well. Those are really the work of our communications team, pulling all that together for us and updating our MetNet with frequently asked questions, those kinds of things. As well as just social media, our website, and those kinds of things. And then we have, many other areas of regional administration, real estate, equal opportunity, audit, risk, that are doing their day-to-day jobs. But they're doing them through telecommunications rather than being here on site. And so amazing that we're able to get our priority 1, priority 2 essential services, but also we're able to support keeping our workforce busy doing their normal jobs as well. So that wraps up kind of the sit rep portion of our presentation today, and I wanted to move on, next slide, to talk about some of the fiscal impacts. And I say some fiscal impacts because, again, this is very fluid and we're still learning about the opportunities that we have available to us. Looking at the top here, one of the things that happened in this last week is Standard & Poor's issued a negative outlook for pretty much all of public finance, all of the government entities, and in particular transit entities. That negative outlook does not mean that they lowered our bond rating. It just means that they see overall that there's a long recovery time from an incident like COVID. And so we are planning to go to market in May with bond issue for environmental services, about $80 million, and for parks, $8.5 million. We will have our rating agency calls in early May. At that point, we'll be able to feel them out a little bit for how do they feel about the council as a AAA issuer, issuing Geo Bonds. In the case of environmental services, they're revenue bonds that are backed with a Geo pledge, so kind of a double safety on those bonds. For parks, they're the Geo pledge, so our property tax levy, and so we don't have a need for transit bond issue at this time because we still have proceeds from our previous bond issue. But we are still planning to go forward with that, and we'll see how that plays out. We talked a little bit about the Federal CARES Act, and we're still unbundling that. We have a little bit more information on transit than we do for housing, but we're still kind of unbundling that and sitting in on a number of conference calls with the federal government to see how that will play out for us. We know we have impacts in transit and in transportation. As you know, we're kind of in a perfect storm here. Our major revenue sources are fare revenues and motor vehicle sales tax, and both are severely impacted by a pandemic. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. We have contracted services and MTS, and Nick talked a little bit about that already. What might not be as obvious is in community development, we are also really impacted economically by revenue-based appropriation. So our state appropriation for parks and trails, again, we pass that through to the parks implementing agencies, are dependent on sales tax revenues. And so we recently received an email from the state that said, expect a reduction in your state appropriation for parks and trails. And if you don't have funds encumbered in grants now, don't encumber any future. And you can expect that could be as much as 50% reduction over the next year. So into state fiscal year 2021. So that one might not have been as intuitive, but almost every area of the council is going to be impacted. In the HRA, we're hearing from tenants who have been laid off, and when they're laid off, that reduces their ability to make their tenant share of rent. And so we've got a very busy HRA working with our customers to do reevaluations of their rent payments. And then in environmental services as well, one of our indicators is housing starts, and that tells us how our SAC is performing. And so we'll talk just a little bit about that as well. So first on our list here, and Wes talked about this a little bit, is what we're experiencing in terms of weekday ridership. And you can see how quickly we fell from early March to the early days of April here. Our ridership has dropped down to about 75% overall, and we're assuming that we'll stay kind of at that 75% as we go through this pandemic. On the right side there, you can see that for Metro Transit operations, 23% of our revenue sources come from fare revenues. And then we've got some estimated revenue losses there as well. So these numbers aren't finalized yet. We're making some estimates based on what information we'll get out of our cubic system. But by estimation, we feel like we lost about $4 million over the course of March, and we do expect that to continue well into the future, even as we see recovery, because we know that it takes some time to recover our ridership. So we'll be watching other transit systems for how they're seeing recovery. We've been watching them for how they saw their ridership loss and their actions that they took as well. And so I will tell you that early on, the state asked us for what we thought our losses were going to be, and I gave them a number that I made up. And then the next day they asked for a question about those numbers, and I said, wait, I need to adjust them. I just was reading the news, and BART system in San Francisco is experiencing much greater ridership loss. I need to adjust. And so then I gave them a bigger number. And then a couple days later, they asked another question. I said, wait, I need to adjust those numbers again. And I gave them an even bigger number. And so this is very fluid. And as we learn from other transit areas, both about what they're experiencing and about how they're recovering, that will help us to look at what we need to do as well. So next slide just shows kind of that same chart, that same loss of weekly ridership as we see in Metro Transit for the Metropolitan Transportation Services, both our Metro Mobility and our Transit Link. Fare revenues represent a smaller portion of transportation services operating revenues, but we're still looking at about, for March, about 700,000 that we lost in revenue. And again, we expect that to continue. The other major loss for us is motor vehicle sales tax. So we don't have a new revenue forecast yet from the state. And so we sat down with Minnesota Department of Transportation and we worked on some assumptions for what we think that might look like for us. And so we're assuming a 50% reduction for April through June and a 25% reduction through state fiscal year 2021. And that, again, really depends on what we see in an updated state forecast. How big is that? $115 million over the next 15 months. That's a big deal. Other information that we're looking at is from the auto industry. Estimates of national car sales down 37% in March compared to March of 2019. Other experts, Fitch, TrueCar, Morgan Stanley forecast anywhere from 10 to 20% reduction over the previous year. So MVest, as you know, is a much larger portion of our transportation budget and really what bus depends on. And that represents about 46% of our budget. So this is a very big deal for us. The recovery time is a long time. We know that the car industry is not even making cars right now. And so we know that there'll be some pent up demand at some point, but it will take quite some time for this to recover. Not all bad news. The Federal CARES Act will definitely provide us some relief, albeit temporary relief. The total transit infrastructure grants under the Federal CARES Act are $25 billion. The state of Minnesota, we expect, will get $308 million out of that $25 billion. Of that amount, $226 million Met Council urban and $82 million MnDOT rural. So the Met Council allocation is shared between the council and the regional providers. The eligibility period for it is out to January 2020. We do think that we will be able to expend that because as we're hearing from the federal government, it looks to be fairly loose in terms of what these dollars can be spent for. For instance, we can reimburse our operating expenses that are related to the coronavirus response. We can receive reimbursement for lost revenues. We can purchase personal protective equipment. We can pay administrative leave of drivers due to reduction of service. The federal share is 100%, so there's no match here. So having those kinds of features related to this funding makes it a very valuable to the council. So this next slide, Greg, next slide, shows how that apportionment will be distributed. And the FTA has made this all 5307 money. And so we take a look at how we apportion the dollars that we received in federal fiscal year 2020, and we use that as a pattern for how we'll distribute the federal CARES dollars. And as you can see, if you look at the right there, the regional providers will get about 12 million of those dollars. Met Council 214 million, and that works out to about 94.6% for the council and 5.4% to the regional providers. This information has been shared with the regional providers. So they know that they're getting significant dollars as well. In terms of housing in the Federal CARES Act, the good news is that there's $400 million available for the housing choice voucher housing assistance payments, as well as $850 million available for administrative fees. What we don't know yet, and we're still waiting on the details, is what Minnesota's allocation will be and what the Metro HRA's allocation will be, and also what kinds of expenses will be eligible for. I should also say that these amounts are the amounts that we are eligible for, not necessarily a guarantee. So we need to have eligible expenses to pull down that money because it is reimbursement based. And finally, on my last slide here, this slide talks about SAC and what we might expect in the future for SAC. We use determinations to reflect what we think might happen in this area, because collected SAC units are only available on a monthly basis. And so we're trying to see a leading indicator on what we might be seeing there. So we're not seeing that yet. I expect that we will see that more in our later months. But again, we are well reserved. And if we have a SAC shortfall, we would first go to our SAC reserve fund before we sought a legislative fix. And right now, Environmental Services has not reported that any cities have reported concerns with paying their wastewater rates. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will turn it back to you and open for questions.
Well, thank you. That was a great presentation, and it really gives a glimpse, I think, for the council of all the operating kind of challenges and complexity that is going on. So I know maybe hard to think that that was actually pretty robust, but it's really just a tip of the vast iceberg that we have at Met Council. Any questions? I know we're already at beyond 6, but Councilmember Vento?
I just want to thank Mary, but Meredith, Chair-Zelli, the entire team. This has been a phenomenal presentation. I've had a sense of some of this from various reports, but thank you. Both as a council member and as a resident of the metro area, I just can't express enough gratitude and pride in the great work you all are doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else have a thought or question? Sure, Councilmember Fredson.
Thank you, Chair. I think this question would be for Wes. This would be in response to so related to the porta potties, right? So the porta potties were set up for the operators, where there was, correct me if I'm wrong, operators that didn't have access to like toilet facilities, right? So if there's an increase or decrease in biohazards on the LRT cars, my assumption is that increase translates to the porta potties. So I'm just wondering, so correct me if that's not the wrong assumption. And if that is right, then I guess my question would be, can we explore some alternatives to ensure that our operators have a safe place to go to the bathroom, either locking the porta potties or perhaps partnering with a business that might be closed to the public but still doing takeout that would let our operators use their bathroom facilities?
Wes?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Council Member, there are two uses of the porta potties. One is we have contacted local businesses for in terms of the operator and solicited as many businesses as we could to see if there could be some accommodations made, because all the doors were closed. That was difficult, and so we added porta potties along the lines specifically to address operator needs. A separate issue, and this is porta potties in areas of bus routes and other areas along routes where operators would be able to use as needed. The other issue we were dealing with was the increase in biohazards on our light rail line, and so we added for riders, we added porta potties all along the line in various places to reduce at least the number of biohazards that we were experiencing. Again, because other facilities, other centers or other public places were no longer open. So it's two separate issues, and I think we've tried to address both in ways that are constructive and address the needs of both directions.
Yes, Sue.
I've got to see if I'm on here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yep.
My question for Wes is, what options and or obligations do we have as a council to limit the transportation for essential purposes only?
Well, that's the big question. Wes, do you want to take a shot at that? And Meredith and I can weigh in.
Yeah, Chair Zelli, I was hoping you'd take that. I'll take the first shot. I'll take the first shot at it. You know, we're trying to get that accomplished through messaging, and we're messaging that aggressively. But in terms of enforcement, it's a difficult situation to enforce. As you know, it's very difficult to, even for people who are outwardly and overtly resisting, it's very difficult to bring charges to individuals that have any impact. And it's even difficult, I will say, use this as an opportunity to say it's even difficult to address serious issues like mental health incidents. We had a situation where we had an individual that was actually on our couplers and of our train and riding on our couplers, and we brought that person into a hospital and a psychiatric unit, and they were back down at one of our platforms within 6 hours, and typically those are 48-hour holds. I mentioned that example because not only are services shut down, but there's also changes to the judiciary system currently, and changes to the correction system that really prevents any processing of violations. So we don't want to enforce this by I'm not trying to suggest that by incarcerating people. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying there's very little possible to enforce it other than moving people away and asking people what their purpose for travel is. And we're trying to do our best to follow the governor's order to educate and not enforce.
And I'll jump in and say Wes has been a great advocate for the operations, for operators, for staff, and for health, and also understanding that we're kind of threading a very difficult balance between maintaining clean and appropriate essential operations, but knowing that those people who are, we call non-destination riders, who come in and use our trains and our buses, are actually exempt from the stay-at-home order by the virtue of the fact that they don't have homes, and that actually is clearly spelled out in the governor's current executive order. And you know, this is something which I have a newfound appreciation past. At MnDOT, when we have encampments, we have a certain way of being respectful and understanding that you can't just pick up encampments because where are they going to go? Well, in this case, we're an actually operating entity, and yet these are the most vulnerable of the vulnerable and unsheltered. We're actually refusing shelters that are set up for that purpose. And knowing that the level of mental illness, chemical dependency, and in some cases criminal behavior, where frankly they're released from jail, this is something that we've reached out to the interagency groups on homeless, Kathy Tenbrook, our housing commissioner. We know that there's more effort now to find shelters, even those that would actually accommodate this kind of population, which are not wanting to go to some of the more traditional shelters. So we're kind of caught in a difficult spot, and we're trying to, as much as we can, to advance the idea that transit should be for essential trips where people really need it to get to their job, to get to their work, healthcare workers, sanitation workers, others, and it's just we're kind of in that middle of that process, and it's we're just being really honest, I think, and we could spend the next hour talking about it, but I want to give you a flavor as to kind of what we're struggling with. Any other comments, thoughts? We can always talk online. Yeah.
Chair Zolli, this is Judy.
Hi, Judy.
I know there's a lot of us, and we could all chime in. I just have to express my gratitude to everybody. You know, as a council member, we're in our communities and not in the day-to-day operations like all of you. And just to know the tremendous leadership and dedication and sacrifice that we have, that are working behind the scenes for, you know, the entire region. It's really heart touching, and I just want to let you know how grateful I am, and the steady leadership that you're all providing, and you know, I will be sure to relay that to my community, the people I represent, and I'm just really proud to be a small part of this team. So thank you all.
Well, no, we're all leaders, and thank you so much for those comments. I know everybody really appreciates it. And Linnea, I know you had your hand up, but I didn't see it. Did you have a comment?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo everything that others have said about just the tremendous undertaking that this is, especially given a scenario where in some cases you're having to build whole new systems in order to move to remote work and address the situation that I don't think any of us were really truly prepared for. I have one question for Wes, and then maybe a follow-up to it. Wes, what are the lines where you think the most people are using, where you're having the trouble with the number of riders exceeding what is best for social distancing?
Chair Zelli and council member, I think that we have periodically during the day different routes where we're seeing some ridership in excess of what would accommodate social distancing. There are a few trips on light rail where that occurs. We're seeing routes like I've been like the 5 and the 14 and the 18 has been mentioned. And I wish I had a way to show you, but we get data through our strategic initiatives division that is based upon a prior day pattern and will instruct our operations on how to assign those extra buses. So we're doing the best we can, but there's still issues that arise throughout the day on some of those lines. They typically tend to be the high use lines, and they're of course not the express service lines. Those lines are, we have the same experience as the suburban transit providers, that they're over 90% down, but it tends to be the urban lines that are typically the highest use lines.
And Wes, is there any anecdotal or otherwise understanding of the ridership age?
Mr. Chair and council member, we don't have anecdotal information in terms of what the age is. There is seem to be a pattern that I will say generally that there of course are more essential rides being delivered during the peak hours of the typical morning and evening peak hours. And the anecdotal information is that during the midday hours, we're seeing much more use by non-essential riders, or at least non-workers, but they seem to be non-essential riders just by how they're behaving. And again, you always risk the mistake of anecdote and observation. And I'll put that in front of you with that comment.
I appreciate that, and I think that's really good guidance. But Chair, if I could.
Sure.
I just, I think my colleagues know that in my day, I work with young people and funding organizations that support young people. And in the 14 and the 5, these are communities that are highly public transportation dependent. And a lot of young people are, really at a loss right now. These are also communities often who are most hit by low income context and disparities. I think one of the things that's really concerning for us is the rise in the disparity of those impacted by COVID-19 being African Americans being grossly overrepresented, both in those hospitalized and those dying. And so I just think it's something for us to keep thinking about how these disparities that we share on our Visualize Disparities page and tool really come to life in very real ways, and how it's just really, frankly, scary that an outcome can be predicted by a socially constructed thing like race, and we can predict that across health and income and housing and employment, and many of the people on the front lines providing services at delivery for food are people who are most impacted by being low income and people of color. So I just hope we can all really think about that as we get back to new normal, how we really can't survive with these types of disparities.
I think that's a really important point to bring up, that this COVID has actually exacerbated the disparities and really makes it front and center, kind of the challenges we've been facing for some time, but now it's really become more pronounced. So thank you for pointing that out. I don't want to cut off any other questions. I know we've been having a long meeting and this is long. Oh, Councilmember Fetson, you had one comment.
Sir, thank you, Chair. Really quick, on a lighter note, a shout out to all the dogs making their voices heard on this meeting. But seriously, just a collective, best wishes and thoughts to our environmental services employee that is recovering from COVID-19. And I'm sure that every one of us just sends our best wishes for a speedy recovery.
Thank you. We will certainly pass that on on behalf of all of the council. Thank you for mentioning that. I know we're just kind of drawing this to an end. This has been really a powerful presentation. I actually want to kind of echo some of the comments of appreciation for the tremendous staff at Met Council and from the leadership, but all through the operations. And I can't say enough for all the directors and our deputy and regional administrators who I get to admire on a daily basis. So it is daunting, and I think we've learned, and I keep saying this publicly, that we will, as a region, come out of this more resilient and more stronger. And I think we're learning as we go. So, and I think that's what I can say collectively. One other just quick thing I have to say is that maybe kind of following up on some of the last comments, stay tuned to some other emails and an activity that I hope we can all do. The regional administrator and I found a little extra funds that were not fully expended on some of the consulting work that had been done in the past. And as we kind of come out of COVID, I think that, and knowing that diversity, equity, inclusion was such a pillar toward our own vision, in order for that to be effective, we kind of, and I know from my past experience, and I know I'm speaking to the choir because many of you have multiple experiences in this area. We've actually engaged Phyllis Braxton from Pink Consulting to help both from a staff leadership and then also maybe for us as a council to kind of develop a kind of a common cultural competence through not a lot of training, but a few sessions to kind of make sure that we're on kind of the same page. And she will be working through this kind of a intercultural competency inventory. Some of you have actually had some experience with the IDI, but stay tuned. I'm happy to talk about that over the next few weeks. But we will at least not waste some of the time we have during this shut-in at home period, where we can kind of work a little bit, take a little bit of our time, and then we will be looking at kind of where we are as a group, and then also actually individually. And I've often had the philosophy that if you really want to change the region or kind of evolve and become understanding of differences, we have to start with ourselves, and then as a group, and then as an enterprise, and then as a region. So this is a little bit a chance for us to step back and kind of have a learning for ourselves individually, and then work also as a group. And this is being mirrored with Meredith and her leadership, and all the staff will be kind of going through the same process. So this is something I think is an opportunity for us to step back and kind of embark on a process to kind of ground us as to how we're going to go forward, thinking about some of those really critical issues. So, and I know we'll have more chance to talk about that. In the meantime, is there any other comments or reports that anybody would like to share at this moment? Regional Administrator, do you have any comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'll keep it brief. In addition to the upcoming IDI work that the executive team and the council are going to do, we are going to be asking, not immediately, but in the coming months, to look at those goals the council set. I think we're going to find that where we were in a position to talk about ridership growth and expansion, we're now going to be in a position to talk about ridership recovery and how long that might take and what our strategies are. And so while I don't think the topics, those big 4 topic areas will change, I do think some of the strategies and some of the measurements and objectives underneath are going to have to, given our new reality. And so if you have time at home and you want to look at those again and think about what you might want to change, you can email me or Katie Driscoll just with early thoughts. We're very early in that process, but we're going to have to make some changes there. I am also asking staff to start bringing more to your committee meetings. We initially had hoped that this would be a shorter duration stay-at-home order, and so we're putting off items that seemed like they would take a very long time on a WebEx type meeting, or would be tough to have a really robust conversation. We're going to start adding those slowly to give folks more practice at having conversations that go back and forth and debate a little bit in committee, to give our advisory committees practice so that we don't give them 5 really intense information items in one night, but maybe 1. But we are going to have to start adding some of those back. So you'll see your committee meetings getting a little longer, just knowing that, we could be back in the building in May, we could be back in the building in June. I don't know. And so we want to make sure that we're getting to more than just the critical stuff, but we're also getting to the stuff that is important and maybe just not as time sensitive. Let's see. We have been connecting with staff this week. The chair and I, along with Mary and each division director, are convening all division conversations. So we started with Metro Transit. Why not go big? We had 300 people on the WebEx, and I know there were rooms where there were a bunch of people on one connection. So it was a great conversation. Staff have great questions. They're curious. They're concerned. They're emotional, but they were all just super respectful and engaged and treated each other well and wanted to know how they could help. And so those are great conversations we're having this week. I don't know how long or how many times we'll do them related to COVID, but what I'm hearing from people already is seeing opportunities to make leadership more transparent and accessible, to get people together in a bigger way instead of a management conference off-site or whatever we might be looking at. And so they've been really good, and I'm just grateful for the folks who are showing up and participating. Finally, I've had folks in those calls ask, what can I do to support my colleagues that are out there on the front lines in our wastewater plants, in our buses and trains? I'm sure you're all wondering the same thing. Brian Funk aptly said, please don't go hug a transit operator. We do not want you doing that. But we do appreciate, and staff appreciate, if you're posting on social media, the thank yous, the notes of appreciation publicly and privately. I think oftentimes we see posts about healthcare heroes, and they are heroes, and our first responders, but the transit workers and the wastewater workers and some of the other groups at the council get left off that list. That's always great. If you're engaging with individuals or small groups of staff and you've got praise for them, that kind of email, social media post, phone call, voicemail, continues to motivate staff and helps people put in the long hours that some folks are putting in. So all really helpful. I know I have an incredible list of thank yous that starts with Mary at the top, because Mary is just doing an incredible job and taking on so much. And you can tell by the 12 titles she has that she's literally taking on the world. The executives, the incident command staff, all of you who have been appreciative and supportive and engaged, our continuity of operations staff, and those that they've been working with over the years to put so much of this in place so we could pull it off the shelf, and really all our staff who are showing up every day with the right attitude and an intention to be creative and innovative and think through how we can band-aid things together that were never meant to go together, and really use new technology and new ways of doing business. So it won't all be perfect every time. We're doing a lot of experimenting, but people have been patient and kind, and it's just a joy to work with those folks. So, and all of you. So my thanks, and I think that's the end of my list.
Thank you, Meredith. I'm going to articulate some comments from Riva, actually a question that unfortunately I will channel through her chat line, but she had asked that we get a report from Terry Dressen, who has been really involved with the Joint Communications Group and has a health background, is to talk a little bit about health disparities, not now, but maybe in the future, and particularly the COVID health disparities, and maybe the data isn't really capturing all the deaths that might be attributed to people of color. And I've actually had the same reaction when I looked at the data. It's like, what's kind of underneath those numbers? So we'll ask, and maybe Terry can dig some of that information out and be able to report back. We not last but not least, General Counsel, do you have any comments or reports?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair, council members. Just briefly, you've heard about all the extraordinary efforts that are going on throughout the council, and as you can imagine, they raise a myriad of legal issues. I just wanted to, in particular, thank my team and the nimbleness with which they are adapting to this and addressing all these legal issues as they come up, so we can not only do the right thing, but do the right thing in the right way. So just a shout out to them and to all of my colleagues who are working really hard right now.
And we're very fortunate to have an experienced general counsel. And I have to tell you that we're not doing all the myriad litigations and the things that happen when we're in the complicated business that we're in, but to be interpreting kind of fast-changing legislation, and that also would apply to us, and getting those comments in a really timely way. So it's we're kind of a full-service shop that you have. It's been appreciative that we be able to react quickly. You know what? Who said digital meetings can't be fun? This has been really interesting, and I appreciate everybody's smart questions, your attention, your engagement, and we will not promise a meeting in place in front of each other next time, because this afternoon the governor has extended the stay-at-home to at least May 4th, and then we'll see. But unless I hear any other comments, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second by Lee.
Is there a second? There must be. Thank you. Any discussion? If not, Liz, are you still here? You're going to call the roll.
Yes. Atlas Ingleson.
Actually, you know what? Before you call the roll, I think last time we decided, unless there's an objection, why don't you give me the authority to adjourn the meeting? Yeah. Thank you. I think the body language is pretty clear. Long meeting to be sitting here in front of a screen. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you around. Thanks.
Bye-bye.